The rain wasn't just falling, it was attacking. Sheets of water hammered the pavement, turning the street into a river within seconds. But she kept walking, drenched to the bone, her work bag clutched against her chest like a shield that had already failed. Her feet ached, her uniform clung to her skin, and somewhere in the back of her mind, his voice still echoed, her manager, screaming at her in front of everyone just 2 hours ago. "You're worthless. One more mistake and you're done." She'd heard it before. She'd hear it again tomorrow. That was the life of someone invisible. But then she saw him. An old man standing alone by the curb, completely still. No umbrella, no jacket, just standing there, letting the storm consume him. Everyone else was running, pedestrians sprinting under awnings, cars splashing past without slowing. But he didn't move. Something about it felt wrong, dangerous even. She slowed down, every instinct telling her to keep walking. She was already late getting home, already exhausted, already invisible to the world. What difference would stopping make? But she couldn't do it. She couldn't just walk past him. "Sir," she called out, raising her voice over the roar of the rain. "Sir, are you okay? You're gonna get sick out here." He turned slowly, and for a moment she thought maybe he was confused, lost. His face was pale, his eyes distant. "My car broke down," he said quietly, almost too quiet to hear. "I just left a meeting. I've been waiting for help, but no one's stopping." Of course no one was stopping. Not in this weather, not in this neighborhood, not for a stranger. "Come on," she said, already making a decision she hadn't fully thought through. "Let me give you a ride." He hesitated, looking at her like she'd just offered him something impossible. "My house is really far." "Then come to my place," she insisted, surprising even herself. "Just for tonight. You can dry off, eat something warm, and rest." He stared at her for a long moment, searching her face for the catch. There had to be a catch. Nobody did this. Not anymore. "You don't even know me," he said. She shrugged, water dripping from her hair. "You don't need to know someone to be kind." And that's how a complete stranger ended up in her cramped apartment 20 minutes later, wrapped in her father's old clothes, the ones she'd kept even though he'd been gone for 3 years. The man sat on her couch shivering while she boiled water for soup. She only had half a can of tomatoes and some stale bread, but it was warm, and that was enough. "I'm sorry," he said quietly as she handed him the bowl. "I didn't mean to be a burden." "You're not," she replied, sitting across from him on the floor because there was only one chair and he needed it more. "I'm just glad I saw you." His name was William. That's all he told her. And as the night wore on, she realized something was wrong. His hands started trembling, his forehead burned. By midnight, he was barely coherent, muttering apologies between labored breaths. Fever, and a bad one. She didn't sleep. Not a single minute. She sat beside him with a cold compress, changing it every 20 minutes, checking his pulse, making sure he was still breathing. Every time he stirred, she was there. Every time he whispered, "Why are you doing this?" she just smiled and said, "Because you needed help." She'd been in his position once, years ago, when her mother collapsed at work and no insurance, no savings, no options. A stranger, a nurse who wasn't even on duty, stayed with them in the ER for 6 hours, holding her mother's hand, making sure she wasn't alone. That stranger didn't have to do that, but she did, and it changed everything. So tonight, she stayed, because that's what you do. By the time dawn crept through the blinds, William's fever had broken. His breathing was steady, his color was returning, but she had exactly 30 minutes to get to work, the most important day of the year. The owner of the restaurant, some invisible billionaire none of them had ever met, was visiting. Her manager had been screaming about it all week. "If you're late, if you mess this up, you're done." She looked at William, still asleep on her couch, and made a choice. She stayed until he woke up, made sure he was okay, gave him water, told him to rest as long as he needed. And then she ran. She sprinted through the same streets she'd walked the night before, her heart pounding, her uniform still damp from yesterday's rain. The restaurant was already buzzing when she burst through the door, staff moving like synchronized machines, her manager barking orders, everything pristine and perfect. And then he saw her. "Maya," His voice cut through the noise like a blade. Every head turned, every conversation stopped. "What is this? Do you know the owner is visiting today? We talked about this all week." She tried to catch her breath, tried to find the words. "I had someone who got really sick. I don't care." He was red-faced now, spitting the words. "I've had enough of your excuses. You think you're special? You think the rules don't apply to you?" The other servers looked away. The kitchen staff pretended to be busy. No one wanted to be next. "You're fired." The words hung in the air like smoke. Final, absolute. She felt the ground shift beneath her. 6 years. 6 years of double shifts and swallowed pride and rent paid just barely on time. Gone. Because she chose kindness over keeping her job. But then someone spoke from behind her. "Good morning, Maya." She froze. That voice. She knew that voice. She turned slowly, and there he was. William. But not the William from last night. This William was standing tall, dressed in a sharp suit, his presence filling the room in a way that made everyone straighten their backs. He looked completely different, powerful, commanding. Her manager's face drained of all color. "Sir," he stammered, his voice suddenly small. You know her?" William smiled at her, warm and genuine, the same way he'd smiled when she handed him soup in her tiny kitchen. "She saved my life last night." The silence in that restaurant was deafening. "She took me into her home," William continued, his eyes never leaving hers. "Fed me, cared for me, stayed awake all night to make sure I didn't die. This woman, who works herself to exhaustion, who barely has enough for herself, she gave me everything." Her manager looked like he might faint. William turned to face the staff, his voice steady and clear. "I came here today because I'd planned to sell this restaurant. I own several businesses, and I'm getting too old to run them all." She felt her stomach drop. He was the owner, the billionaire, the man everyone had been terrifying themselves over for weeks. But after what she did, he paused, looking back at her. "I've changed my mind." He turned to her manager, and his expression hardened. "She's not fired." Then he looked at her again, and his voice softened. "Maya Johnson, if you're willing, I want you to take over this restaurant." The room erupted into whispers, gasps, disbelief. Her manager stood frozen, his clipboard shaking in his hands, and she couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't process what was happening. "Me," she whispered. "Why?" William stepped closer, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "Because someone with your heart, your integrity, someone who stops in the rain when everyone else keeps walking, that's who should lead. Not someone who treats people like they're disposable." And in that moment, everything hung in the balance, her entire life, her future, the weight of a decision she never thought she'd have to make. But here's the question that matters. When the world hands you everything you've ever wanted, but you don't believe you deserve it, what do? Do you run from the gift? Or do you finally stop running from yourself? She didn't answer. Not right away. Because how do you respond when a stranger, no, a billionaire, offers you everything you've ever dreamed of in front of everyone who's ever doubted you? The restaurant remained frozen in that impossible moment. Her manager's face had gone from red to gray to something resembling a wax figure melting under heat. The kitchen staff peered through the service window. The servers stood like statues. And William, this man she'd wrapped in her dead father's clothes just hours ago, stood waiting for an answer that wouldn't come. Because here's what nobody tells you about life-changing moments. They don't feel magical. They feel terrifying. She started, but the words died in her throat. Her hands were shaking. Her mind was screaming 1,000 different things at once. "This isn't real. This is charity. You're not qualified. Everyone's watching. Everyone's judging. They all think you slept your way into this. They all think you're a fraud." William seemed to sense it. He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to answer now," he said quietly. "Take the day. Think about it. But know this. I didn't offer you this position because I owe you. I offered it because I see something in you that you don't see in yourself yet." And then he left. Just like that. Walked out of the restaurant with the same quiet dignity he'd had standing in the rain, leaving behind a room full of people who suddenly had very different opinions about the invisible server they'd ignored for 6 years. Her manager opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Maya, don't," she said, surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. Just don't. She grabbed her bag and walked out, leaving behind the job she'd just been fired from and hadn't yet been hired back to. The morning sun hit her face, but she barely felt it. Her phone buzzed, 17 missed calls, her mother, of course. But she couldn't talk. Not yet. Not when her entire reality had just shattered and reassembled itself into something unrecognizable. She walked for hours, through streets she knew by heart, past the coffee shop where she'd applied 3 times and been rejected 3 times, past the community college where she'd dropped out because tuition and rent couldn't both get paid, past the overpriced boutiques where she'd pressed her face against the glass as a kid, imagining a life where price tags didn't matter. And with every step, the voice in her head got louder. You're not special. You're not smart enough. You're not educated enough. You're just a girl who got lucky because some rich old man had a fever. This isn't a fairy tale. This is real life. And in real life, people like you don't get opportunities like this. By the time she reached her apartment, the sun was setting. She'd been walking for 8 hours straight. Her phone was dead. Her feet were screaming. And when she opened her door, she found William's jacket still draped over her chair, the expensive one he'd been wearing when he arrived at the restaurant. She picked it up, and something fell from the pocket. A photograph. Old, worn at the edges, like it had been carried for decades. A young woman in a restaurant uniform, standing in front of a small diner, her smile bright enough to light up the faded colors of the image. On the back, in careful handwriting, Sarah, 1987. She started with nothing but a dream and a kind heart. And suddenly she understood. This wasn't about her. Not really. This was about William seeing his late wife and a stranger who stopped in the rain. This was about him trying to give someone else the chance he'd probably given Sarah all those years ago. This was about legacy, not charity. But that didn't make the fear go away. She called her mother. "Baby!" Her mother's voice cracked through the phone. "I've been calling all day. Are you okay? Someone from the restaurant called and said something crazy happened." "Mama," she interrupted, "I need to tell you something." She told her everything. The rain, William, the fever, the firing, the offer, all of it spilling out in one breathless confession. And when she finished, silence stretched between them for so long she thought the call had dropped. Then her mother said something that changed everything. "Baby, I've watched you give pieces of yourself to everyone your whole life. You fed the neighbor kids when their mama was on drugs. You stayed late to help new servers learn the system even though they got promoted over you. You sent me money for my medications when I know you were eating rice for dinner. You've spent 28 years being kind to everyone except yourself." Her voice cracked. "Maybe it's time you were kind to yourself too. Maybe it's time you believed you deserved something good." That night, she barely slept. She sat on her floor, surrounded by bills she could suddenly pay, in an apartment she could suddenly leave, staring at a life she could suddenly change, and the weight of it was crushing. Because here's what nobody warns you about. Sometimes the hardest prisons to escape are the ones we build in our own minds. Morning came too fast. She showered, put on the only professional outfit she owned, a blazer with a small stain on the sleeve she'd tried to hide for 3 years, and walked back to the restaurant. The same walk she'd made 1,000 times. But everything felt different now. The staff was already there when she arrived, but this time, they weren't ignoring her. They were watching, whispering, measuring. She could feel their eyes tracking her every move, dissecting every choice, waiting for her to fail so they could say they knew all along. William was sitting at a corner booth, reading the newspaper like he had all the time in the world. He looked up when she approached, and his expression shifted from neutral to something almost hopeful. "I'll do it," she said before she could change her mind. "But I have one condition." He folded the newspaper, giving her his complete attention. "Name it. Give me 90 days to prove I can actually do this. No special treatment, no safety net. If I fail, I walk away, and you find someone qualified. But if I succeed, this position is mine because I earned it, not because you felt guilty." William studied her for a long moment, then extended his hand. 90 days. They shook on it, and just like that, her life split into before and after. But here's the thing about transformations. They're never as clean as the movies make them look. The next 60 days were hell. Pure, unfiltered hell. William handed her a stack of books on restaurant management, financial systems, supply chain logistics, food cost percentages, labor laws, marketing strategies. She read them at night after shifts, her eyes burning, her brain refusing to absorb information that felt like a foreign language. During the day, she shadowed William, learning the invisible machinery that kept a restaurant running, the orders that needed to be placed before dawn, the vendors who needed to be negotiated with, the health codes that could shut you down if you missed a single detail, the payroll systems, the scheduling conflicts, the personality management required to keep a kitchen from exploding. And through it all, the staff watched, waiting, judging. Her old manager, now demoted to assistant manager, followed her around with barely concealed contempt, correcting her in front of servers, pointing out every mistake, making sure everyone knew this was temporary, that she was in over her head. That reality would reassert itself soon enough. But the worst part, he wasn't wrong. She was drowning, making mistakes that cost money, ordering too much of one ingredient and not enough of another, scheduling people wrong so they either had too many servers during slow hours or not enough during rush. She approved a menu change that half the kitchen staff hated. She tried to implement a new reservation system that crashed on the busiest night of the month. Every day felt like confirmation that the voice in her head was right. You're not qualified, you're not ready, you're going to fail, and everyone's going to watch. But there was someone else watching too. Kelly, the assistant manager who'd been there for 10 years, who'd trained every new hire, who knew the restaurant better than anyone except William himself, who should have been offered this position instead of some random server who got lucky. Kelly didn't say much, but she didn't have to. Her eyes said everything. Every time Maya made a decision, Kelly was there with a subtle correction. Every time Maya tried something new, Kelly was there to explain why it wouldn't work. Every time Maya started to gain confidence, Kelly was there to remind her of her place. And slowly, carefully, Kelly began to sabotage. It started small, an order that didn't get placed, a schedule that got accidentally deleted, a vendor who suddenly couldn't deliver because someone had canceled the contract. Little things, things that could be explained away as honest mistakes, but they kept happening, and happening, and happening. By day 60, Maya was barely holding it together. She'd lost 8 pounds she couldn't afford to lose. Her apartment was covered in spreadsheets and notes. She woke up at 4 a.m. with panic attacks, convinced she'd forgotten something critical. She'd stopped calling her mother because she couldn't bear to admit how badly things were going. And then the health inspection got scheduled. The worst possible timing. The restaurant was already struggling with new systems, new procedures, new leadership. Half the staff resented her. The kitchen was barely functioning. And now, a health inspector was coming in 72 hours to determine whether they kept their license or shut down permanently. William found her in the office at midnight, surrounded by violation codes and cleaning protocols, tears streaming down her face. "I can't do this," she whispered. "I've been trying so hard, but everything I touch falls apart. Maybe everyone was right. Maybe I'm just not cut out for this." He sat down across from her, his expression unreadable. "You could walk away," he said quietly. "No one would blame you. You gave it your best shot." And for a moment, just a moment, she almost did. Almost stood up, walked out, went back to being invisible, back to safety, back to knowing her place. But then she remembered something. That man in the rain, shivering, alone, everyone walking past because stopping was inconvenient. Stopping was hard. Stopping meant getting involved in someone else's mess. She'd stopped anyway. "This restaurant," she said slowly, "these people, they need help, real help. Not another manager who treats them like disposable parts, not another system that prioritizes profit over people. They need someone who actually gives a damn." She looked up at William, and something in her had shifted, hardened. "I'm not walking away." The health inspection was in 72 hours, and she had no idea if she could save this, but she was going to try. What she didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that Kelly had already made sure she would fail. The question wasn't whether the restaurant would pass the inspection. The question was whether Maya would discover the betrayal before it destroyed everything. 72 hours. That's all she had. And the first thing she did was something nobody expected. She called a staff meeting at 6 in the morning, before the restaurant opened, before anyone had their coffee, before anyone could hide behind their usual masks. They filed in looking confused, annoyed, suspicious. Kelly stood in the back, arms crossed, that same subtle smirk playing at the corners of her mouth, the smirk of someone who knew something nobody else did. Maya stood in front of them, exhausted but steady, and said the thing that had been burning in her chest for weeks. "I know some of you don't think I deserve this position. I know some of you are waiting for me to fail. And honestly, I don't blame you." The room went quiet. "I was a server 60 days ago. I made minimum wage plus tips. I ate ramen for dinner most nights. I'm not special. I'm not more talented than any of you. But I am here. And for the next 72 hours, I need you to decide something. Are you going to help me save this place, or are you going to watch it burn?" Nobody spoke. The silence stretched like a wire ready to snap. Then one of the line cooks raised his hand. "Miguel, the quiet one who never caused problems. What do you need?" And that's how it started, not with a grand speech or a miracle, but with one person deciding to stop watching and start helping. Then another. Then another. Within an hour, they divided into teams, deep cleaning the kitchen, organizing the storage areas, checking every piece of equipment, reviewing every protocol. But Maya noticed something. Kelly wasn't helping. She was watching, her expression growing darker with every hour that passed, with every small victory the team achieved together. By hour 48, the restaurant was transformed, cleaner than it had been in years, systems running smoother, staff working like an actual team instead of competing individuals. And Maya felt something she hadn't felt in 2 months. Hope. That's when she found it. She was doing a final walkthrough of the storage area when she noticed something off about the refrigeration unit. The temperature display showed 38 degrees. Perfect. But when she opened the door, warm air hit her face. The unit wasn't cooling. Hadn't been cooling for at least 12 hours based on the spoiled produce inside. Thousands of dollars of inventory, ruined, and the health inspector was coming in 24 hours. Her hands started shaking. This wasn't an accident. Someone had manually overridden the temperature controls and changed the display to hide it. Someone had sabotaged the restaurant deliberately, carefully, knowing exactly how to make it look like incompetence instead of malice. She heard footsteps behind her. Kelly. "Problem?" she asked, and there was something in her voice now, something sharp and satisfied. Maya turned slowly. "You did this." Kelly didn't deny it, didn't even pretend. "You want to know what's funny? I've been here 10 years. 10 years of covering for lazy managers, of fixing their mistakes, of keeping this place running while they took credit. And then you show up, barely 2 months in the industry, and suddenly you're the owner?" She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You don't deserve this. You never did." The words hit like physical blows. Because part of Maya, that voice that never stopped whispering, agreed with her. But here's what Maya realized in that moment. Standing in a walk-in cooler surrounded by ruined food and broken dreams, deserving something and earning something aren't the same thing. "You're right," Maya said quietly. "I didn't deserve this opportunity. It fell into my lap because I was kind to a stranger on the worst night of my life. But I've spent every day since trying to earn it, making mistakes, learning, failing, getting back up." She stepped closer. "What have you been doing? Hiding behind resentment? Tearing down instead of building up? You could have helped me. We could have made this place incredible together, but you chose sabotage over partnership." Kelly's expression cracked just slightly. "So what now? You're going to fire me? Prove everyone right that you're just like every other manager?" Maya could have, should have, probably, but instead, she said something that surprised them both. "No, I'm going to give you a choice. Help me fix this and stay as head chef with full creative control over the menu, or leave right now and take your resentment with you. But if you stay all in. No more sabotage, no more undermining. We succeed together or fail together." The question hung between them, heavy with possibility and risk. And for a long moment, Maya thought Kelly would walk away. But then something shifted in her expression, something that looked almost like relief, and she said, "What do you need me to do?" They worked through the night, salvaging what they could, replacing what they couldn't. Kelly called in favors with suppliers. Miguel and the kitchen crew reorganized everything. By the time the sun rose, they'd transformed a disaster into something manageable, not perfect, but survivable. The health inspector arrived at 9 sharp. Maya stood at the entrance, exhausted, terrified, but no longer alone. Her entire team was there, standing with her, ready to show what they'd built together. 3 hours later, the inspector handed her the report. Passed, not just passed, exceeded standards in multiple categories. The restaurant reopened that night to a packed house. Word had spread somehow about the new management, the new energy, the new vision. The community showed up. The homeless man Maya used to share her lunch with came in wearing his best clothes. Neighbors who'd never given the place a chance filled the tables. And in the corner booth, William sat with his grandchildren, watching everything with quiet pride. 6 months later, the restaurant had a new name, Heart and Soul, and a new reputation. Best employer in the neighborhood, highest rated service, food that actually meant something because it was made by people who cared. Kelly's menu had been featured in 3 local magazines. Miguel had been promoted to kitchen manager. And Maya had proven that leadership isn't about credentials or connections, it's about character. But here's the real ending. One rainy evening, almost exactly a year after everything changed, Maya was closing up when she saw someone through the window. A young woman, soaked through, struggling with grocery bags, clearly overwhelmed. And Maya didn't hesitate. She grabbed an umbrella and headed out the door. Because the cycle of kindness doesn't end. It multiplies, it spreads, it transforms. Now here's my question for you, and I really want you to think about this. When was the last time you stopped for someone when everyone else kept walking? When did you last choose inconvenience over indifference? Drop your answer in the comments below. Tell me about a time you helped a stranger, or a time a stranger helped you. Because these stories matter. They remind us that we're not just isolated individuals grinding through life. We're connected. And sometimes, one act of kindness in the rain can change absolutely everything. So comment below, hit that like button if this story moved you, and subscribe, because next week, I've got another incredible billionaire story that'll blow your mind. Trust me, you won't want to miss it.